I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when I see it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. I love the litany against fear. I mean, that is just so Tolkien-esque. Like, it really reminds me of the poem at the beginning of The Lord of the Rings. You know, the 9 for the mortal men doomed to die. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all in the darkness, bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Like, it's just so great. I mean, Frank Herbert, like, this is so cool. And I love that they used it in the trailer. So you may be wondering why I'm suddenly talking about the Dune trailer, and well, that's because over the past month I finally sat down and read the Dune book. Well, I listened to it on Audible, but I technically read it, like, I've got the paperback. Okay, here's something. Is it Dune? Is it Dune? Or is it June? Because I sometimes flip-flop between saying Dune and Dune, so you're gonna hear me switch back and forth between the two, because how is it actually pronounced? But anyways, I digress. I finally sat down and listened to / read Dune, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed this book. Sitting down and reading this really just put into perspective how much this book had influenced science fiction. I mean, there is so much Star Wars in this, there's so much Blade Runner in this, like, Frank Herbert is a genius. That being said, when I was reading this, I couldn't help but think about the upcoming film version and thinking, really? Denis Villeneuve is going to turn this book and make it 2 separate films? Because although I enjoyed the book as a whole, I will say the first half of the book is pretty slow, and that's just because it's a bunch of internal monologues and dialogue scenes that don't really need to be there. Like, a lot of that stuff could easily be interpreted either visually or through the dialogue. It doesn't necessarily have to just be internal monologue. Like, part of me wonders what Denis Villeneuve is actually going to do with this first film, because, I mean, the first half of the book isn't as good as the second half. I did raise this concern on the Dune subreddit, and I got a bunch of responses saying that it's to do with world building, and there just clearly isn't enough time to clearly justify the book in one film, a la the David Lynch film, which I haven't seen, but I do own, and I do plan on covering that one day, either for a movie commentary or an actual review, but I do plan on covering the David Lynch Dune. And someone on Reddit did respond to me and say that David Lynch actually did want to turn Dune into 2 films, or at least make it a much longer film, but the studio said no. But I mean, Peter Jackson turned Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring into one film, like one good 3-hour-long film. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you did that to Dune, it could easily be done. Now, I know I might be sounding a little ignorant. I mean, I have only read the book once. Maybe I have missed all the political nuances and subtleties, but I don't know. As of right now, I don't see why this film is being split into 2 parts. I mean, part of me can see the appeal for Warner Brothers. I mean, financial options. If Dune is successful, you're going to get double the money by splitting the book into 2. But then if Dune underperforms, then we won't get the second part. And that's something. If Warner Brothers is all in on the Dune franchise, why didn't they let Denis Villeneuve film both parts back to back? If you're going to take a financial investment and risk, why not just have Denis do both films, and then if the first one underperforms but gets massive critical acclaim, and that critical acclaim brings it to audiences' attention, then the second film will do better, right? But either way, I trust Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker. I mean, the man is a master of his craft. I haven't seen every Denis Villeneuve film, I haven't seen Enemy, and I haven't seen Sicario, but from the films that I have seen, I really enjoy his style of filmmaking. My favourite Denis Villeneuve film is Prisoners. I mean, that film is just a fantastic crime thriller. I mean, Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano, everybody is just mwah. And Roger Deakins' cinematography, I mean, Roger Deakins is just the best cinematographer around. I mean, his work is just always the best. I mean, his masterful silhouette shots, like in Blade Runner 2049 or Prisoners or 1917, just whew. I really liked Arrival. I mean, Amy Adams was fantastic, the cinematography was great, and I really liked this sort of grounded alien invasion take, like what would happen if aliens did try and invade Earth. I actually do want to revisit Arrival, because once I saw the ending, I just want to rewatch the whole film again, knowing the context of the ending, because I won't lie, when the film ended, my brain did hurt a bit, not because I was confused, but more just because I was like, I want to watch this again, but with the understanding of the ending. Like, by knowing the ending of the film and rewatching it, does it make it better? Like, I'm really curious. And then we get to Blade Runner 2049. Now, bear in mind, I don't like the original Blade Runner. I just think it's a really boring film. I mean, it's a beautiful film, don't get me wrong. It's visually stunning, and you can clearly see the impact it's had on the sci-fi genre. I just think it's boring as hell. And then we get to Blade Runner 2049, which again is visually stunning, and it has a much better protagonist than Ryan Gosling's Kay. I just, once again, found the film to be very slow. Now, that's not to say I dislike Blade Runner 2049. In fact, the more I think about the film, the more I really like it. Just to me, the biggest detriment of Blade Runner 2049 is the editing. I don't know why Denis Villeneuve decides to hold on shots for so long. Like, I know he's trying to create an atmosphere, but like, he holds on to like every shot 10 seconds too long, and I'm like, why are we still holding on this shot of Ryan Gosling walking through this deserted wasteland? Again, I think the themes and ideas and the characterization of its characters are much better than the original Blade Runner. And as a whole, I think Blade Runner 2049 is a much better film than the original Blade Runner. To me, it's just really slow. The point is, Denis Villeneuve is a fantastic filmmaker, and having read the book and going back to the trailer for his version of Dune, I am so impressed. I think Denis is going to nail it. This film might be another one of his masterpieces like Prisoners, because I mean, oh my god, this film looks incredible. Even if it is another slowly paced film like Blade Runner 2049, at the very least this will be a very faithful adaptation of Dune. And if it's not a faithful adaptation of the book, then at least it looks really pretty. I mean, Greg Fraser's cinematography for this film just looks visually stunning. I mean, the look of Arrakis and Caladan, it looks gorgeous. Seeing things like the Gom Jabbar, Paul training with Gurney, Paul and Jessica in the desert, the Sandworm, Paul's visions of Cheney, like, it all just looks like it's been ripped straight from the book and put onto screen. Like, at the very least, this film is going to be very accurate to the books. Timothée Chalamet looks like he's going to be a great Paul Atreides. I mean, already, he brings so much pathos and emotion and depth to the character that I find to be in the book a little bit of a blank slate. And what I mean by that is, yes, obviously when you read the book, you see it through Paul Atreides' point of view. But if you looked at Paul Atreides from an outsider's perspective, like say you just walked up to Paul Atreides, he seems like a very stoic and kind of bland person with not real much personality or depth. I mean, you just walk up to him and you'd be like, "Hi, Paul," and he'd just be like, "Hi, I'm Paul of House Atreides. Duke Leto is my father. Hope you have a good day." But it looks like Denis and Timothy have just managed to work around that bland side to Paul and give him a lot more depth and pathos and emotion. And I think that also stems into Paul and Duke Leto Atreides' relationship, because I mean, in the book, to me anyways, it felt like a very distant relationship. Like, they were obviously on good terms, but it seemed like obviously Duke Leto wasn't very there, and he was an almost absentee father, and like, him and Paul, whilst they get along, they don't actually, get along. But then seeing shots of the two of them together, you can see that Duke Leto is very much burdened by the weight of the world, but when he's with Paul, he is happy, like he's with his son. Like, you can see that there is a connection and a bond between the two. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica is just perfect casting, and apparently they've expanded her role a bit more. She isn't just Leto's concubine and a member of the Bene Gesserit. Instead, they've added onto her and they've made her sort of like a general. She's like a master at arms now for House Atreides. I don't think that's a necessary change, considering that Jessica is a really important female character, regardless of the fact that she doesn't get much to do in terms of action. I mean, when you think about it, Lady Jessica is the most important character in the whole of the Dune universe, because without her, none of the motion that takes place in the first Dune book happens. Like, Paul becoming the Muad'Dib and the Kwisatz Haderach, like, none of that happens without Lady Jessica's involvement. But I mean, as a whole, the cast is star-studded. I mean, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho looks badass. When he says the line, "Let's fight like demons," like, yeah, I would go into war with this version of Duncan Idaho.
Let's fight like demons.
Hell yeah. Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck is like a very solid choice. Like, if you told me, oh yeah, Josh Brolin's gonna play Gurney Halleck, I'd be like, yeah, that's a completely great choice. I mean, you can definitely buy him as that loyal, faithful servant to House Atreides. Like, yeah, with like that tough exterior. Perfect casting. I am surprised we don't see a lot of Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Harkonnen, because I mean, like, he is the main villain of the film. Like, why hasn't the trailers highlighted more of the villain of the film? I mean, this is a long trailer, yet I don't feel like they've shown us enough of the Baron Harkonnen. He is the villain of the film. The one thing that the studio really needs to do is market the hell out of this film, because I mean, to a general audience member, if they look at this trailer, they go, "What is this? I don't know what this is about." But to a book reader looking at this stuff, you're like, "Oh, this is great. This is gonna be a fantastic adaptation." But then again, the general audience doesn't know what the hell is Dune. Or to like a person who hasn't seen the David Lynch film, is that it's Game of Thrones but in space. But even then, that doesn't do Dune justice, because, this is a much more sort of spiritual, religious, philosophical thing, and Game of Thrones is more like political thriller, but this also has political elements. Like, Dune is very hard to explain and to a casual audience. Like, in a lot of ways, you kind of just have to read the book to experience what Dune is. So Javier Bardem as Stilgar and Zendaya as Cheney are really good casting. Like, I like them as the Fremen, but that being said, I am a little disappointed diversity-wise, because when you think about it and you read the book and you see how the Fremen act, they are pretty much representative of Middle Eastern culture, so it would have been nice if they actually went out and got Middle Eastern actors to play the roles of Chani and Stilgar. But, I mean, it's not a big issue, but also, like, considering how deeply influential the Fremen are of Middle Eastern cultures, it does suck that there aren't Middle Eastern actors playing Stilgar and Chani. But I mean, besides that tiny gripe, Dune is my most anticipated film of 2021. I mean, when I first saw the trailer as a non-book reader, I was like, oh yeah, this looks pretty cool and interesting. Big spectacle, big sandworms, very nice cinematography, that looks good. But having actually read the Book of Dune and seeing its sort of philosophical and spiritual elements, and the way it plays out in the book and how this would be so epic to translate to screen, like, Dune is my most anticipated film of 2021, and considering all the talent involved like Denis Villeneuve, Timothée Chalamet, Javier Bardem, Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, Zendaya, Greg Fraser as cinematographer, like, yeah, this movie is going to be amazing, right? Like, the trailer certainly sells it like it's a masterpiece. I mean, just, like, from the music, like, Hans Zimmer's version of Eclipse by Pink Floyd is fantastic, and Timothée Chalamet's narration at the end where he's reading the litany against fear is just so good. Like, when he delivers the "fear is the mind killer" line, like,
where the fear is gone, only I will remain.
But I gotta say, what do you guys think of the Dune trailer? Did you like it? Have you read the books? Are you gonna go in blind? What are your thoughts on Dune right now? Because as of right now, I'm super hyped for it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Hit the notification bell down there. My social media links are down in the description, so if you give those a look and a follow, that'd be very much appreciated. And until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.